Greetings and welcome to another session of The Upside. This is Pastor Kim Shelton, and so I'm excited to be with you all on this Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I come before you just giving you a word of empowerment, encouragement to help you make it through the week. And so we chose Wednesday because it's the middle of the week, and you've already had a couple of days in back of you and a couple of days in front of you. So we just wanted to give you some encouragement to keep going. And so today's word for the upside is going to be life. Life, Life. And that word came to me a couple of weeks ago. A friend of mine we were looking at movies to watch, and so she suggested that I watch this movie on Prime Video called Life Itself. And so grudgingly, I watched it. It's probably the best movie ever in life because it really talks about life. And in case we're living this thing called life, I just thought we'll just take some time to talk about it. And so there's this line in the movie. There's several lines in the movie that are great, but this particular line that I wanted to use to set context up for today's discussion. And so that particular line simply says, the only truly reliable narrator is life itself. But life itself is also completely unreliable because it is constantly misdirecting and misleading us and taking us on this journey where it is literally impossible to predict where it is going to go next. Life as the ultimate unreliable narrator. But the particular line where it says the only true reliable narrator is life itself. And so this comes from the main character of the movie, Abby, who is a student and she's working on her thesis. And she comes up with this whole philosophy on this life. And she makes up that statement and and it begins to show as the movie begins to progress how life itself is what is lived, what is narrated, how it is to be. Because of course, in life we plan life, right? As soon as we are little, people ask us what we want to do when we grow up. We start planning our life and saying, well, we want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, firefighter, professional athlete, or whatever it is. We begin to start talking about what we want to be in life. And so we start planning our lives, right? And so we start going to school for those. We start having love interests and babies, and life begins to happen, and we begin to live it, right, as it happened. And then I'm reminded of a scripture, a familiar scripture that John 3:16 that tells us that love for God so loved the world that he gave us his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Right? So it's important to understand that life is a part of what we live and what we breathe and what we receive each and every day. And so every day we make a commitment to what we're going to do with our life. Some of us wake up every day committed to get up and go to work. Some of us get up and go to school. Some of us just get up. But we make this commitment that we're going to do something this day, this day, this life, these 24 hours that we have. That's hopefully to be productive, even productive for some, maybe different than productive for others. But we decide at this very moment that we are going to pursue this life in such a way that we live it. And lots of times our life doesn't go quite as planned, and sometimes it goes exactly as planned. But when those moments happen, as the narrator said, the only true reliable narrator is life itself. And so life, it becomes the teacher for us. Life becomes the guide for us. Life becomes our direction of where we go, when we go, and how we go. So life becomes to be this thing for us that we sometimes anticipate and sometimes we don't anticipate. And so my question for you all is, what has life itself been to you? Has life been what you have planned it to be? Has life been full of triumphs? Has it been full of tragedy? Has it been a testing of faith? Has it been faithful? Has it been gracious or has it been merciful? And so, what has life been for you all? And just to give us a time to reflect. We're in the Advent season, and we're looking at the coming and the arrival of the Christ child, and we've gone through the hope and peace and joy of lighting of the candles of our Advent pillars, that we are reminded during this season to hold on to hope, to seek peace, and to find the joy that's unspeakable that's inside of us. And so when we look at all of that, how has our life transpired? There Cardi B and Chance the Rapper got a song, "I'm Living My Best Life," right? Made a lot of L's with my best friend, just talking about how they living their life, right? Um, and so when I listen to that, it's like we're living our best life because this is how life has been for us. It hasn't been great for us, but it's been a life. We're still living, we're still moving. It might have started rough, but wow, look at us now. We're doing some amazing things. And so when we look at that, we just look at life and what does life mean to us? What does life look like for us? And so we begin to look and reflect off life itself. And so when we look at the biblical text, when we look at the narration and the living text, we have to just look in the mirror and look at our lives and how we have lived our lives, how we have planned our lives, the mistakes that we have made in our lives, the great victories that we have had in our lives, but to be considerate and reflective enough about our lives. 9 months ago, our lives were turned upside down when a pandemic came and into this nation like we've never ever seen before. And we've learned to shelter in place. We've learned to uh, celebrate one another via Zoom, FaceTime, Google Classroom, Google Meets, whatever. We've learned to live a life differently. We've learned to be minimum in our lives, minimalist in our lives. We've learned to cook a little bit more. We've learned to pray a lot more. We've learned to be cautious of others. We learned to wash our hands and put a mask on. And so our lives, as we've known it a year ago this time, has changed. Life itself has happened, and we're in the midst of it. And some of us have changed with it. Some of us are refusing to change. Some of us have been impacted by change, and some of us are the change. But life has happened, life continues to happen. And so what do we do with the moving parts of life? What do we do with all of that that's happening, that's moving in our lives? Well, I want to suggest to you all that we hold on to our life, that we are gracious that the life that we have, because there's 300,000 that are not living anymore because of this pandemic. There are people who passed away of cancer. There are people who passed away of heart attacks. There are people who passed away of gun violence and police brutality, where life doesn't matter, but our lives do matter. And so we ought to be cautious of what we do with it, and that we live it to its fullest, that we live it in the presence and the power of God, that we live life that's meaningful for us, because the true narrator of our life is life itself. The true reason we breathe is what we put into our lives, what we want to take out of lives. We control a little bit of our lives, and God does the rest. But in this season, this spirit, this magic that this season brings to us, along with anxieties and grief that this depression that this season also brings to us, I want to suggest that we live our lives. We live them well. We live them in the presence and the power of God. We live them in community. Nobody's meant to be alone. Get you some friends, get you some community, that we live it in community. that we are also healthy in our lives. COVID has came and disrupted so many people's lives. Some because they were not as healthy, and some who were healthy and were able to uh, be victorious over it. But we need to have healthy lives. And when I mean healthy, I mean our biological health, that we're taking care of our bodies, our psychological health, that we're taking care of our minds, and our spiritual health, that we are moving our prayer, that we are moving our praise, that we are getting closer and knowing and connecting with our God and being consistent with it. And so in our lives, we continue to be encouraged. Our steps are ordered in such a way, but we do have control over pieces of our lives. And so I don't want us to throw away our lives. Some of us have had a past life, and that's in the past. Now we have a future life. And so I'm hoping in the future that we live this life that's narrated out of goodness, that's narrated out of grace, that's narrated out of mercy, that's narrated out of hope and love and peace and joy, that's narrated out of the ashes comes the rose, that's narrated that we are one with God and one with Christ. And so, as we move from our word today of life, I want us to know that life itself is the teacher and the guider. That life itself gives us what we need to continue the life, a better life, a greater life, because God has put a greater things in us. God has said that I give you life and give it more abundantly. And so we're somehow not living our abundant life. We need to reconnect with God to figure out which way we can go to live this abundant life that we do. And abundance doesn't mean prosperity as far as money, but abundance in health, abundance in grace, abundance and goodness. There's so many other abundances out there that God will take care of our needs and just sprinkle a little bit of our wants at the same time. But in this season, this spirit, that we invite you to just embrace life now, today, that you will have the future that you anticipate, that God will be a part of it. And life itself is your biggest narrator, is your biggest solution, is your biggest hope. This is Pastor Kim with The Upside. Thank you for joining me. Remember, life itself is how we create it in the power and presence of God. Take care. God bless.